If you're dying to see what happens next and want to stay 5 episodes ahead in this series and others, then why wait? Join our awesome community of over 500 members on Patreon, where they're already enjoying the latest episodes right now for as little as $2.50 for your first month. So what are you waiting for? Hop over to Patreon after this video and get exclusive early access. With that said, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the page, and I'll see you in the next one.
Cross my heart and hope to die. Welcome to my dark side.
A deafening roar shattered the battlefield's tense silence, ripping through the air like a violent storm. Ah! The Grand Priest's aura exploded outward in a dazzling eruption of raw power, a spectacle unlike anything the Saiyan warriors had ever seen. For the first time, his restrained composure cracked, his emotions laid bare. Rage burned in his usually serene eyes, and the calm demeanor that defined him gave way to something far more primal and dangerous. The ground trembled beneath his feet, fractured and broken by the sheer force of his unleashed energy. Bits of debris levitated momentarily, suspended by the overwhelming pressure that surged around him. The air itself grew heavy, vibrating with the raw magnitude of his presence. His voice came low but powerful, like the rumble of thunder before a storm. Playtime is over. His gaze swept over the 3 Saiyan warriors before him, sharp and unforgiving. You Saiyan have finally managed to anger me. His tone, laced with disdain, carried a bone-chilling finality. Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan braced themselves as his words hit like hammers. You keep appearing one after another like pests who refuse to die, the Grand Priest continued, his voice dripping with venom. But this is my failing. I should have eradicated you all the moment Zeno extracted the aqua foam. A brief silence followed, his declaration weighing heavily on them. The revelation sent a ripple of unease through the Saiyan trio. It was no secret that Zeno's manipulation of the aqua foam, a divine element of unimaginable power, had been the catalyst for this clash. The Grand Priest's admission felt like a veiled promise of destruction. The 3 warriors exchanged tense glances, each grappling with their own thoughts. Vegeta scowled, his fists clenching tightly. Gohan's expression darkened, his mind racing. And Goku, ever defiant, gritted his teeth as his fiery aura flickered to life around him. The Grand Priest took a slow, deliberate step forward, his mere movement causing the ground beneath him to shatter further. His energy radiated outward, scorching and unrelenting, like standing in the center of a supernova. The Saiyans instinctively retreated a step, the oppressive force pushing them back. I must end this now, the Grand Priest murmured to himself, though his words were loud enough for them to hear. He raised his hand, and the overwhelming surge of power caused the very fabric of space around him to ripple. It was as though reality itself was struggling to contain him. Gohan's eyes widened in disbelief as he felt the surge. You're telling me he wasn't going all out before? This whole time, he was holding back? His voice carried an edge of panic. Vegeta, usually composed, spoke through gritted teeth, his gaze fixed on the Grand Priest. No, he wasn't. And even now, he trailed off, his voice a quiet growl. Even with this power, I don't believe this is his limit. The ground trembled violently, fissures racing outward, as though the planet itself was crying out in agony. The sheer intensity of the auras clashing above was too much for it to bear. Dust and debris swirled in the chaotic wind, darkening the battlefield as the Saiyan warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their resolve steeling them for what was to come. In a blinding flash, the Grand Priest, Daishinkan, the very embodiment of divine order, vanished without a sound. His form disappeared so abruptly, it was as if the very fabric of reality had swallowed him whole. Goku's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. Brace yourselves. Remember what we practiced in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, our 3-way combo attacks. We've all grown stronger, picked up new techniques, but no matter how much power we gain, our instincts are what make us unstoppable. We fight best as a team. Now, let's show him what we've got. Vegeta let out a low chuckle, though a fierce grin tugged at his lips. His pride burned like a roaring fire. Despite his stoic exterior, he couldn't deny the thrill coursing through him. The Saiyan race had climbed to a level that demanded respect, even from the Grand Priest himself. That thought sent a rush of satisfaction through his veins. His eyes narrowed, sparkling with a mix of anticipation and excitement. Don't slow me down, Kakarot, he quipped, his voice laced with his signature arrogance. "Let's see if you two can keep up with me." Without waiting for a reply, Vegeta launched himself forward with a deafening battle cry, his aura blazing like a dark, stormy flame. Goku and Gohan surged ahead in perfect sync, their movements fluid and purposeful. Goku's silver-white aura flared like liquid light, while Gohan's golden energy roared around him, crackling with unbridled intensity. The trio moved as one, the ground quaking beneath the force of their collective power. The Grand Priest reappeared, standing calmly amidst the chaos, his expression unreadable. His robes flowed in the fierce winds created by the approaching Saiyans, but his stance remained unshaken. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at his lips as he watched them close in. His divine energy, potent enough to obliterate galaxies, radiated from him in waves that distorted the very air. Vegeta struck first, his speed blinding. He materialized in front of the Grand Priest, spinning into a ferocious roundhouse kick aimed at the deity's temple. The Grand Priest tilted his head slightly, dodging the attack with unnerving ease. In the same motion, he retaliated with a swift palm strike aimed at Vegeta's chest. "Not a chance!" Vegeta snarled, bringing up his forearm to block the blow. The impact sent sparks flying, illuminating their clash. In that instant, Goku and Gohan joined the fray. Goku came crashing down from above, his fist blazing with energy. His Ultra Instinct form honed his movements to perfection, each strike precise and devastating. Simultaneously, Gohan darted low, channeling his ki into his leg for a sweeping kick aimed at the Grand Priest's ankles. The Grand Priest reacted with inhuman speed. He raised an arm to intercept Goku's strike, the collision unleashing a shockwave that carved another crater into the battlefield. With his other hand, he caught Gohan's kick mid-air, gripping it tightly and halting its momentum. Despite his effortless defense, the Saiyan warriors had trained for this exact situation. Their teamwork was seamless, their synergy honed to perfection. While the Grand Priest held Goku and Gohan at bay, Vegeta saw his opening. Twisting his body with explosive force, he drove his elbow into the deity's ribs with bone-shattering precision. Crack! The sound echoed across the battlefield, and for the first time, the Grand Priest faltered. Though he quickly regained his composure, that split-second lapse proved their attacks weren't in vain. Gohan used the opening to wrench himself free, flipping backward with practiced grace. Landing a few paces away, he thrust both hands forward, summoning a massive surge of energy. His aura flared as bright orange orbs of power formed in his palms, crackling with destructive potential. "Big Bang Masenko Barrage!" Gohan roared, unleashing a relentless torrent of energy blasts. The waves of orange light rained down like a meteor shower, each blast tearing through the air with deafening booms. The Grand Priest moved his hand in a smooth, almost dismissive gesture, scattering the majority of Gohan's energy blasts. Each deflected beam slammed into the ground, exploding into massive towers of smoke and fire. The battlefield was engulfed in chaos, the air thick with heat and ash, but one blast managed to graze its mark. The energy tore through the pristine fabric of the Grand Priest's robe, leaving a gash across his shoulder. A faint flicker of irritation crossed his usually calm face. For a fleeting moment, the wound sizzled against his divine aura. Then, as if time itself rewound, a faint golden shimmer spread across his skin. The injury healed almost instantly, the robe mending itself in tandem. "Now's the time!" Goku shouted. His voice carried the urgency of the moment. His silver-white aura flared to life, and with an explosive burst of speed, he charged forward. Clenching his fists, he let his energy surge, channeling it into his arms. "Kamehameha! Burst!" Goku roared. His palms flew forward, releasing a condensed, shimmering wave of blue energy. This wasn't his ordinary attack. The beam was compact, compressed into a tighter, denser form that crackled with overwhelming force. The blast collided with the Grand Priest, driving him back for the first time. His heels carved deep grooves in the shattered ground, scattering rubble and dust in his wake. When the energy dissipated, he stood unharmed but visibly scuffed, faint trails of dust drifting from his robe. Humph, he exhaled, his tone carrying a trace of amusement. Impressive. You've refined your attacks well. The Grand Priest extended a single finger toward the heavens. The skies darkened instantly, as if the universe itself had bent to his will. A vortex of swirling cosmic energy gathered above, pulsating with unimaginable force. The gravitational pull was so intense that nearby debris and even chunks of the ground began to lift into the air. Gohan's sharp instincts kicked in. "Everyone, move!" he yelled, searching desperately for a safe angle of escape. Before the Saiyans could react, the Grand Priest brought his finger down. From the swirling storm above, countless orbs of radiant, star-like energy rained down with terrifying precision. Each orb smashed into the ground with deafening explosions, tearing massive craters into the already decimated battlefield. "Brace yourselves," Goku shouted, raising his arms to form a protective barrier. A dome of radiant, white-hot energy enveloped both him and Gohan, shielding them from the relentless bombardment. Vegeta, standing his ground nearby, let his own purple aura explode outward. Sparks of violet energy danced along his barrier as he withstood the assault, his stance unyielding despite the immense pressure. The air screamed under the onslaught, and the ground groaned as though it might collapse entirely. But through sheer grit and determination, the three Saiyans pushed forward, step by painstaking step, refusing to give in. Finally, Vegeta let out a primal roar, his voice cutting through the deafening chaos. His aura flared with renewed intensity, wrapping around him in blazing purple arcs. "I've had enough of this," he bellowed, bringing his hands together in his signature stance. Bolts of raw power surged between his palms, crackling with violent energy. "I'm ending this! Right now!" The others didn't hesitate. Goku moved to Vegeta's side, focusing his silver Ultra Instinct energy into a swirling orb between his hands. Gohan mirrored the movement on Vegeta's opposite side, his golden white aura surging as he charged his ultimate attack. Their combined energy created a mesmerizing spectacle, three distinct auras merging into a singular, radiant triad. "Hakai Final Flash!" Vegeta roared, unleashing a massive purple beam of energy that lit up the battlefield like a second sun. "Big Bang Kamehameha!" Goku followed, his dense silver beam spiraling into Vegeta's attack. "Ultimate Masenko Flash!" Gohan shouted, his golden wave completing the triad. The three beams spiraled together, fusing into a colossal column of pure, blinding light. The combined attack tore through the battlefield, carving a deep chasm in its path. Winds howled like raging hurricanes, and the planet quaked under the strain of their unleashed power. The Grand Priest stood firm, his gaze sharp and unyielding. With a single decisive motion, he thrust his hands forward, catching the monstrous beam head-on. His divine aura crackled violently as it absorbed the attack's immense energy. For a moment, it seemed as if the Saiyans might overpower him. The beam pushed him back, inch by agonizing inch, forcing his feet to dig into the broken ground. But then his expression hardened. The Grand Priest took a deep breath, summoning an overwhelming surge of golden light. His aura erupted like a solar flare. "Transcendent Dominion!" he roared, his voice booming like thunder. A massive shockwave radiated from him, obliterating the tri-beam attack in a dazzling explosion of light and energy. Sparks scattered like stars across the battlefield as the blast sent Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta flying in different directions. The Saiyans hit the ground hard, coughing and trembling from the sheer force of the explosion. Smoke and dust clouded the air as they struggled to rise, the taste of blood and grit on their tongues. When the dust finally settled, the Grand Priest still stood tall. His robes were torn, and faint marks decorated his arms. But those injuries glowed briefly before vanishing entirely, healed by his divine power. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his presence alone making the earth beneath him quake. His eyes burned with intensity as he addressed them. "Do you see now?" he asked, his voice echoing across the battlefield. "You cannot reach me. I am beyond you." Goku dropped to one knee, his chest rising and falling in heavy, labored breaths. Yet his eyes burned with an unyielding resolve, the kind that made him who he was, a Saiyan warrior who never backed down. "I've faced tougher foes, and we always find a way to rise above," he declared, the grit in his voice cutting through the tension. Nearby, Vegeta staggered to his feet, his battle-worn body trembling under the strain. But his pride wouldn't let him falter. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth as he wiped it away with the back of his hand, his aura sparking defiantly. "Don't count me out yet," he snarled, the determination in his voice matched only by the fierce glare in his eyes. "Even if I can't stand, I'll fight on." Gohan exhaled sharply, steadying his stance despite the flickering golden-white aura surrounding him. His energy, though resilient, showed cracks from the intense battle. "We can't give up now," he said, glancing at his father and Vegeta. His voice was steady, but there was a quiet fire behind his words. "Not when we've come this far." Above them, the Grand Priest hovered, his aura blazing like a sun, flooding the battlefield with its oppressive radiance. The air was heavy, suffused with his immeasurable power, and his expression was one of calm impatience. "Then come," he said, his voice echoing with authority. "I'll show you precisely why I am the Grand Priest." But the three Saiyans stood together, their auras flaring to life, a unified blaze of determination. A smirk spread across Goku's face, mirrored by Vegeta and Gohan. Together, they spoke in unison, their voices resonating with unshakable conviction. "Then we'll show you why the Saiyan race is the ultimate warrior race." Suddenly, Goku's stamina surged back, an almost miraculous recovery. His energy, previously drained, now replenished itself at a staggering rate. It was as if he hadn't been fighting at all. The universal life energy he had absorbed earlier through the spirit bomb coursed through him, restoring his strength and focus. He clenched his fists, the sheer force of his aura shaking the ground beneath him. "Looks like I'm just getting started," he said, grinning at the stunned Grand Priest. Beside him, Gohan knelt, pressing his fingertips into the planet's surface. A soft glow spread outward from where he touched, and tendrils of energy began to converge on him. Every living thing connected to the planet, the grass, trees, animals, contributed a portion of their life energy. It flowed into Gohan, filling him with a renewed vitality. As the last traces of energy settled into his body, he rose to his feet, his injuries completely healed. His aura flared brighter than ever, casting a golden white light that rivaled the Grand Priest's. "This planet still has so much to give," Gohan muttered, his tone calm yet determined. The Grand Priest's expression darkened slightly. He floated higher, instinctively distancing himself from the surface. He knew this technique all too well and wasn't about to risk his own energy being drawn into it. Vegeta, meanwhile, stood in silence, his dark energy swirling around him like a storm. His dark siphon ability had been in effect throughout the battle, subtly absorbing the Grand Priest's ki with each blow he landed. At first, it had been negligible, a small trickle of power, but now it had snowballed into something far more significant. The energy he'd siphoned was vast, pushing the ability to its limit. Vegeta grinned, his aura shifting into a violent purple as Ultra Ego kicked in. The more he fought, the stronger he became. Every hit he took fueled his power, stacking atop the energy he'd absorbed. "This is it," Vegeta growled, his voice low and menacing. His body tensed, the overwhelming energy radiating from him causing the air to vibrate. "The strongest I've ever been." It wasn't over yet. Far from it. The Saiyans had one last edge, one born from their unique biology and relentless willpower. The Zenkai boost, the sacred gift of their kind, had finally activated. Every close brush with death, every agonizing blow they had endured, now came full circle. The injuries they suffered, the energy they lost, it was all repaid in spades. Their bodies surged with newfound power, pushing each of them beyond their prior limits. This was what it meant to be a Saiyan. And for Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan, this was their peak. Their auras flared brighter than ever, lighting the battlefield like suns. The air crackled with their energy, heavy with promise and danger. Yet, this was it. They had reached the end of their reserves. If this combined might couldn't bring the Grand Priest down, nothing would. Goku clenched his fists, his silvery aura roaring to life. His body still bore the marks of the brutal battle, but his energy was unshaken. "That's it for the spirit bomb. I don't have anything left from it," he admitted, though his tone carried no regret. "But this will have to do." Gohan, his golden white energy swirling like a living flame, nodded solemnly. "The planet, it can't take any more. I can't siphon Kai again." He exhaled, his breath steady, as he set his determined gaze on the Grand Priest. "But this power, this will be enough." Vegeta hovered slightly ahead of the others, his violet aura brimming with raw, dark energy. He remained silent, his gaze locked on the Grand Priest. He didn't need to say it. His power spoke for itself. His dark siphon ability had drained the Grand Priest far more than anyone realized, and now the full effects were settling in. The Grand Priest suddenly faltered, his serene expression giving way to something more focused. He drifted down, landing on the broken ground. The realization struck him. Vegeta's smirk grew wider. "What's the matter, Grand Priest? Feeling a little drained?" The Grand Priest's aura shimmered in response, a shimmering, divine glow that bent the air around him, but it wasn't as potent as before. His head tilted slightly, his lips curling into a faint frown. "Ah," he said calmly, "I had forgotten. Saiyans of your bloodline possess that peculiar dark siphoning technique. It threads through the very energy of the battlefield. You've been stealing my power all this time." He glanced at Vegeta with cold eyes, his tone carrying both irritation and respect. "It is clever, annoying, but clever." He let his words settle before continuing, his expression hardening. "I may be immortal, but infinite energy. That is something even I have yet to achieve." Vegeta crossed his arms, his violet aura spitting arcs of dark lightning into the ground. "Oh, I bet that stings," he mocked. "Realizing all this time, I've been siphoning your power with every punch, every blow." Goku's gaze darted between the two. He could feel it. The Grand Priest wasn't at his full power anymore, but even drained, he was still a terrifying presence. "Vegeta, don't get cocky," he said, his voice serious. "He's still stronger than anything we've ever faced. Stay sharp." To Vegeta's right, Gohan stepped forward, his energy blazing brighter in the low light. "No more risks, no more surprises," he said firmly, his eyes locked on the Grand Priests, unwavering. "We fight as a team, no openings." The Grand Priest regarded them for a long moment, his unreadable gaze shifting from one Saiyan to the next. He raised his hand slightly, letting his aura flare once more. It wasn't just light. It was an oppressive force that pressed down on everything around them, shattering loose rocks into powder and scattering debris like paper. "You've pushed me further than I intended," the Grand Priest admitted, his tone calm but cold. "But if you think this will be enough to defeat me..." His eyes narrowed as his power surged again, the sheer pressure threatening to buckle the planet's surface. "You are gravely mistaken." Vegeta's jaw tightened, but his smirk didn't fade. "We'll see about that," he growled. His energy climbed even higher, his aura now a chaotic storm of raw power. Gohan's breathing steadied as beads of sweat rolled down his temple. His golden white aura pulsed, matching the Grand Priest's energy in defiance. "No matter how strong you are," Gohan declared, his voice unwavering, "we're not backing down. We'll win this." Goku cracked his knuckles, his silvery ki flaring around him like a whirlwind. His eyes locked on the Grand Priest, filled with determination and fire. "We've faced the toughest enemies across the universe," he said, his voice calm yet electric with excitement. "And every time, we find a way to win. Let's show him why we're the ultimate warrior race." The very fabric of the world around them trembled violently, as if it could no longer endure the sheer magnitude of power surging through the battlefield. Shattered rocks floated upward, caught in the swirling storm of energy. The Saiyans braced themselves, their combined aura flickering against the oppressive force radiating from the Grand Priest. Despite all their training, all their newfound abilities, the Grand Priest remained an indomitable force, an immortal being whose strength defied reason. The weight of his presence pressed down on them, forcing even the most battle-hardened among them to reevaluate the fight ahead. The Grand Priest's voice, calm yet cutting, sliced through the storm. "Yes," he admitted, his tone laced with condescension. "You Saiyans are remarkable warriors, but there's something you seem to have forgotten." His gaze sharpened, growing colder, more severe. "You've never fought me, and I am the strongest of them all." As if fate had chosen this very moment to intervene, an unfamiliar energy surged into the battlefield. The Grand Priest's aura flared uncontrollably for an instant, glowing brighter, fiercer, as if another presence had fused with his own. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the influx of power settle into him. "Ah," he exhaled, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Right on time." Goku's brows furrowed as he studied the sudden change in the Grand Priest's energy. It wasn't just stronger, it was deeper, richer, layered with something ancient and infinitely wise. "What's going on now?" Goku muttered, his stance tightening as he readied for whatever was coming. Vegeta, ever perceptive, noticed the flicker of realization in the Grand Priest's eyes. "He's gotten stronger," he growled, his fists clenching. "And it's not just raw power. There's knowledge behind it." The Grand Priest finally opened his eyes, the faint smirk still on his face. "It seems Zeno has retrieved the Heartstone," he said, half to himself. "With its duty fulfilled, my wife has returned to me, along with the power and experience she has gathered over millennia." His voice carried an edge of finality, as if this moment had been inevitable. Gohan stepped forward cautiously, his golden white aura sparking to life again. "What's he talking about? The Heartstone?" he asked, glancing at his father and Vegeta. The Grand Priest answered, his tone now infused with cold authority. "The Heartstone was a sacred artifact, guarded by my wife for eons. It ensured balance in this realm and held the potential to awaken unimaginable strength. Now that its purpose is complete, all that she was, her strength, her knowledge, has returned to me." He raised his staff, the intricate carvings along its length glowing with divine energy. "And with it, I will show you the true reason angels were chosen to guard the Omni King." The air grew impossibly heavy, the atmosphere charged with an overwhelming power that seemed to crush everything beneath it. The Saiyans felt it instantly, a gravitational force that pulled at them relentlessly. Not even their combined energy could counteract it. "What is this?" Goku grunted, his knees trembling under the weight. Beneath him, the ground began to crack and sink. Gohan gritted his teeth as he struggled to stand upright. "It's like the entire dimension is collapsing in on us," he said, sweat pouring down his face. Vegeta's aura flared violently as he fought against the crushing force. His voice was a low growl. "Shh! This isn't just energy. It's the sheer will of the universe bending to his power." Above them, the Grand Priest's aura shifted. No longer just radiant. It was blinding, like a star exploding into life. The entire dimension was consumed by his energy, its glow expanding endlessly into the void. He lowered his gaze, his expression calm but deadly serious. "You believe your kind is the ultimate warrior race?" he asked, his voice echoing as if spoken from the heavens themselves. His aura twisted and condensed, wrapping tightly around his form. "Allow me to correct that foolish perception." The Saiyans braced themselves, their combined energies flaring defiantly, despite the overwhelming pressure. Goku's silver aura burned brightly. Gohan's golden energy crackled like lightning, and Vegeta's violet storm roared louder than ever. Yet the Grand Priest was unfazed. He raised his staff, its length shimmering with divine power as it began to shift, reshape. The Saiyans watched in alarm as the once simple staff transformed, its form elongating and gaining sharp, ornate edges. The air around it hummed with a power that felt almost alive. And then, the Grand Priest spoke a single word. It was a word that seemed to echo through existence itself, carrying with it an undeniable sense of finality. "Ban Kai!" And that's it for today's episode, guys. If you watched to the end, then that could be an indication that you enjoy the series. So please leave a like on the video. Thank you and take care.